choosing the right GPU can always be difficult, but it's especially difficult right now with a new generation of Nvidia GPUs just having launched with the 4090, the 4080 coming out this month, AMD just announced their 7900 XTX and 7900 XT, and even Intel hopped into the discrete GPU game. But we'll talk about all of those upcoming GPUs and all of that, but that's going to be when we get to the higher price points. Because the reality of the situation is the vast majority of people are probably going to be spending $500 or less on a GPU, and, honestly, a lot less than that for many, many people. So as we get towards the higher end, you'll hear me talk all about the upcoming high-end GPUs. But for now, let's start talking about the low end and why you should not buy an RTX 3050, at least, if you're in the US. And this video is going to be focusing on US pricing, and I'm also focusing on the new pricing market, so let's just get that out of the way. Anyway, the RTX 3050 is the bottom end of Nvidia's current, RTX 3000 lineup, and I say current because okay, when a new GPU generation launches, like we just had with the 4000 series, it can be a long time before you start seeing the lower end cards. So, in other words, a lot of people are wondering, should I wait? Well, if you're not planning on spending in the $1,000 range on a new GPU, then there's probably nothing that's going to really be interesting you or even putting much pricing pressure on these lower end cards until well into next year. I doubt we'll see new mid-range GPUs talked about until at least January. And then the true low-end cards probably won't be coming in until significantly after that. So the RTX 3050 is currently Nvidia's lowest-end GPU. It's $280. And you shouldn't buy it because the RX 6600 from AMD is faster and costs $190. Now, to be fair, this $190 deal is depending on a $20 mail-in rebate. This $30 promo code is instant and you don't need to worry about that. But that just gets it down to $210. And this $20 mail-in rebate, you have to deal with the mail-in rebate, and sometimes people worry about the reliability of those, all of that, and either way, you don't have the money right away. It is tied up for a little while. But these are readily available for $210, $215, $220, multiple models in stock and available at that price point. And it absolutely crushes the RTX 3050. Well, I mean, in price to performance, but even just in performance. And you might be thinking, okay, what about NVIDIA's features, things like that? Okay, NVIDIA's DLSS upscaling is a little bit better than FSR2. It's not a lot better than FSR2. It was a lot better than FSR1, but it's not that much better than FSR2. It is a little bit better, though. However, in my opinion, this class of GPUs is mostly going to be playing at 1080p, and at 1080p I would be trying to stick to the native resolution as much as possible anyway, because neither upscaler is going to look great. Also, what about NVIDIA's ray tracing performance lead? Again, at this performance tier, I don't think ray tracing is usually worth using, because in reality, in a lot of games, you're going to be turning down graphics settings. In other words, rather than play at ultra plus ray tracing, you'll probably want to be playing on, high settings. And if you choose an RTX 3050, maybe even going down to medium at times. I don't think this is the time where you'll be wanting to enable even more demanding performance settings like ray tracing. The other reason to consider going Nvidia rather than AMD is professional use cases. There's a lot of productivity apps that are programmed around Nvidia's hardware. And so with that in mind, if you know that you use a professional application that is programmed for NVIDIA, you should probably stick to NVIDIA, but look up your particular use cases for that. This video is going to focus mostly on just gaming, and I think that at this low end, AMD's RX 6600 is the $200 GPU to purchase. NVIDIA really doesn't even compete at this price range unless you want to buy something used maybe. I don't know. They just really don't compete in price to performance in the new market. Now, if you do want to spend closer to $300, well, once again, that could take you up around the RTX 3050, coming in starting at $280 and going up to $300 quickly from there. But if you were willing to consider AMD in this price range, you could go with the 6600 XT, which is actually able to be had if you count the rebate for $260. And if you don't count the rebate, $20 more than that for about $280. And then there's another multiple models available similar to that price range. Now, there's also the 6650 XT, which is almost the same GPU. It has slightly faster memory. It doesn't make a huge difference, but the point is, both of these are, the 6650 XT is slightly faster. It's within a few percent, but both of them are going to absolutely crush the competition of the RTX 3050. It's not even that close. Now, Intel did get into the game here, so if you're willing to go with an Arc GPU, you can find them. Stock actually has been selling out pretty readily, but you can find an Arc A750 in stock right now for around $300 and an A770 for around $340. However, I would suggest most people stay away from Arc right now due to its inconsistency, especially in older graphics APIs. And quite frankly, I think the software could use some work. I hope people buy these to keep Intel in the game, but I don't recommend you buy these over something that just, in my opinion, makes more sense, like a 6600 XT, which can cost less and has much more mature software and more predictable driver support, especially in older APIs and things like that. Now, if you do want to go past the $300 range, so the RTX 3060 from Nvidia, its price has been coming down. We can see one available for $355. That's a single fan little MSI model. Now you can go up into like $370 range, things like that, and get at least a 2-fan cooler. But the point is, the RTX 3060 coming in that around $360, $370 price point. Now, once again, if you take a look at the AMD side here, and I promise I am not just AMD fanboy, buy AMD, ignore Nvidia, that kind of a thing. I'm just showing you that just in price to performance, you can get a 6700 XT right now for actually less money than an RTX 3060. They're available here for $350. That's counting a mail-in rebate, so it would be $370, but still that's basically the same price as the lowest end cooler models on the RTX 3060. And it's just going to crush an RTX 3060. It also has the 12 gigabytes of VRAM like an RTX 3060, so really the only things going for the 3060 is ray tracing performance, but since the 6700 XT is a step up in performance tier overall, it crushes it in rasterization and doesn't lose as badly as you might think in terms of ray tracing performance, just because it is a higher tier going up against a lower tier at the same price bracket, because, well, that's what the free market demanded. So again, if you're just shooting for gaming, I think the 6700 XT is making a whole lot of sense right now at this price point. And, you have to really want those NVIDIA features or driver stability reputation or something to buy that over the 6700 XT. It doesn't make sense to me. Now, there is a 6700 non-XT, but currently it doesn't cost that much less than the XT version, and the XT version gets you an extra 2 gigabytes of VRAM and faster performance, so I think it is worth that extra little bit right now at these current pricings. There's also a 6750 XT, which again has slightly faster memory, that kind of a thing, but I don't think it's actually worth the price jump all the way up to $400 to get that. Now, the next tier up from Nvidia is the RTX 3060 Ti. Now, the 3060 Ti comes in around $440 to $460 at the lower end cooler models, but this is really more of a 6700 XT competitor. So really you're paying a lot more to get, this a similar performance other than in ray tracing. So this basically, if you're interested in spending a little bit more, you could get the 3060 Ti for slightly better ray tracing. You do get the DLSS upscaling. Has less VRAM. I don't think that's that big of a deal at this performance tier, but something to consider. But I really think the 6700 XT just makes a much better price to performance argument here. Now, if you want to step up to the $500 range, and this is kind of getting on that brink, again, AMD here. Okay, the 6800 is only a little bit more than a 3060 Ti. We see models available here for $480. And an RX 6800 is going to crush the 3060 Ti. I mean, maybe not in ray tracing, but again, we're looking at such a higher tier going against such a lower tier. We're doubling the VRAM capacity, and the rasterized performance is just off the charts better with the 6800. Now, even the 6800X, the thing is, the reason why I wouldn't recommend getting the 6800 though, is that the 6800 XT, there is a model available right now. Now, these don't always stay in stock. You can usually find them for around $540 anytime, anywhere, but $515 available right now. Now, that does depend on a mail-in rebate, so it's $535 if you don't count that. But the 6800 XT coming in at $515 or $535, I just think if you're getting anywhere near the $500 price point, the 6800 XT just makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. And Nvidia's competitor here in this price bracket is the RTX 3070 coming in at $530. So either a little bit more if you count the mail-in rebate, or $5 less if you don't. So they're basically the same price. And I would take a 6800 XT absolutely any day over the 3070 unless I was using a professional application that really just needed Nvidia to work properly. Okay, now I honestly think that this is the range of graphics cards that most people would be considering, is in this $500 or less category. And at these price points, the current market, if you're looking at just for gaming, AMD is offering extreme value compared to the Nvidia competition. Now, if you do want to go past this point, I do think the RTX 3080 can make sense. Now, it's $733, meaning this is something like a 40-something% price increase over the 6800 XT. And the RTX 3080 and the 6800 XT perform about the same in rasterization. And so that price increase is only going to make sense if you want to heavily rely on ray tracing. And I really think that's the only reason why it makes sense at all. I mean, maybe DLSS, although like I said, FSR2 isn't super far behind DLSS if you're going to be using it like the quality setting or something like that. So if you do want to go up into the $700 and something price range, I do think the 3080 is an interesting option if you want to use ray tracing. Because up until this point, I really wasn't weighing ray tracing very heavily, because I think at most of those performance tiers, the ray tracing just isn't really that mind-blowing in my opinion. When it comes to the RTX 3080, you're starting to be able to use more significant ray tracing workloads at 1440p without having to use DLSS so aggressively that it just washes out the image quality. And anyway, so I feel like the 3080 is where ray tracing starts to make sense. Now, what about the new GPUs coming out later this month? So we have the RTX 4080 16GB coming out later this month. What do we know about its price and performance? Well, price, the MSRP is going to be $1,200. Expect a lot of AIB models to be at least $100 more than that, if not $200, because there's such a price gap between the 4090 and the 4080 16GB to fill that AIB partners probably feel like they can tack on an extra few $100s there for their fancier, cooler designs and everything like that. Now, what do we know about its performance? Well, let's take a look at this slide. So this slide was published by Nvidia themselves, and right now, if we want benchmarks on the RTX 4080, we have to look at information that's coming directly from Nvidia. Now, in this slide, Nvidia is trying to show off their DLSS 3 frame generation, which only their 4000 series can use. However, these frames, DLSS 3, I don't think is the selling point that Nvidia wants it to be. It's a cool feature, don't get me wrong, but it generates frames that don't actually increase the performance of your game. They make the motion look smoother. Generally, you want higher frame rates for two reasons. One, it makes the motion look smoother, and two, it decreases the input latency. It makes the game more responsive. DLSS 3 really shouldn't even be called DLSS. It's a completely different technology. It's frame interpolation, like a lot of TVs have, but it works better. So it generates two frames, and then it inserts a fake frame in between. What I mean by fake frame is the game engine does not actually compute that frame, so it's non-responsive, it's not performant. And in order to generate that frame in between and not get your frames out of order, it has to delay showing you frame 2. So the game generates frame 1 and frame 2 of real frames, but it delays showing you frame 2 slightly for like half a frame of latency in order to insert the fake frame 1.5. These new frames don't look quite as good, although in motion they can look pretty close. But again, they don't increase the actual performance of the game. So, in other words, these are not apples to apples. Notice the dark green versus the light green. These are not like terms. But in gray here, we do see NVIDIA's DLSS off performance. And we get 3 games to look at here. We get Plague Tale Requiem, and we can see the 4090, 4080 16 gigabyte, the unlaunched 4080 12 gigabyte. So if you've been out of the loop and you're just now looking at GPUs, this one doesn't exist anymore. It's probably going to get rebranded and relaunched as a 4070 Ti or something like that. We don't know yet. But then we can see it up against the 3090 Ti, 3080, and 3070. I think it makes sense to compare the 4080 16 gigabyte against the 3080 to see what sort of performance gain would be on offer and how much more you're going to be paying. So notice the performance numbers in gray here in Plague Tale Requiem. This is with ray tracing off. In F122, which is ray tracing on. And in Microsoft Flight Simulator, which does not have ray tracing. I've taken these into a calculator, and I've divided them to get the performance increase. So between them, we're seeing a 45% improvement in performance for the 4080 16 gigabyte, a 54% improvement, and a 53% improvement. So it's looking like we'll be somewhere between a 45 to 50% performance increase for the 4080 versus the 3080. And it's going to cost $1,200 if you get it at its MSRP, which at launch might be difficult to do. You might end up actually paying more than that. And the RTX 3080 costs $730 right now if I bought the cheapest model that I could just put in my cart right now without searching for any particular deal and buying it brand new. That's a 64% price increase. So in other words, it's looking like the 4080 is going to scale pretty evenly with the performance of the 3080 at its current price, but actually maybe a little bit worse, although you do get the new features like DLSS 3 frame generation, if that matters to you, and you do get more VRAM capacity. So you get something for the slightly worse performance scaling. But the point is, if you're in the market for a $700 GPU, a $1,200 GPU just really probably isn't also in the market. So these are kind of targeting 2 different people. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not impressed by the value proposition of the 4080. I don't know, guys. Most people could buy a 3080 and be extremely happy with it, especially if you're gaming at 1440p or below. And I think even going up to ultra-wide 1440p, the 3080 is pretty good. And you could check out my recent video comparing the 3080 12 gigabyte against the 4090 at ultra-wide, and I have another video comparing them at 1440p and 4K. So anyway, I think most people could be happy with a 3080 at 1440p or below for significantly less money. But if you do want to go into that $1,000 price range, do be aware that while this is the November buying guide, a month after the RTX 4080 comes out, we have the 7900 XTX coming in from AMD. And they're claiming a 1.7 times performance gain up to, so on average, it's probably going to be less than that, probably more like 50 to 60%, we'll see. Performance uplift compared to their 6950 XT, and that's at 4K. They're also claiming that same kind of uplift for their ray tracing performance. And again, AMD's ray tracing performance has been significantly behind. But I guess what I'm getting at here, though, is if we jump back to the scientific calculator, we're seeing that the 4080 is giving us maybe a 55% performance jump over its predecessor, the 3080, whereas if the AMD claims are even close to accurate, a 6950 XT is actually a little faster than a 3080, which is the baseline that we used here. But even if you call it equal, it's looking like AMD's GPU should be as fast or probably faster at rasterized performance than that 4080. I would guess probably faster. And then the ray tracing performance, though, probably will be significantly behind. So if you're thinking about in that $1,000 to $1,200 price range, I would say it does look like AMD is going to offer the better deal. But I think, again, if you're caring a lot about ray tracing, that's where they're going to try to upsell you on that 4080. Now, if you want to spend more than $1,000, I mean, if you want to spend $1,000, by the way, do not buy a 3090 right now. Okay, we saw the 4080 compared to the 3090. It's not like massively better, but it is better. So I do think you should get that over a 3090, assuming, of course, that you can buy one near launch and all of that. So basically, I think for most people, I think buying something like a 6800 XT for $500 is the way to go, or drop down, as I suggested, there's something to be said for a $200 6600, especially if you're gaming at 1080p. Now, like I said, if you want some ray tracing, the 3080 gives you a compelling option right now. Although you have to care a lot about ray tracing to pay that huge of a markup over that 6800 XT. And then, like I said, 4080, that's a lot of money for a GPU, guys. Anyway, I don't know what to tell you guys. It's not out yet. 4090s are still hanging out at $2,000. This one that claims $1,800 isn't actually in stock, even though PC Part Picker says that it is. So right now, I think the 4090, well, honestly, guys, if you just want to buy the best of the best, it doesn't look like AMD's XTX is going to keep up. Maybe they'll give us a refreshed version that could beat it in rasterized performance, but it doesn't look like they'll be beating it in ray tracing. So overall, it looks like if you just want to buy the best GPU available right now, buy yourself a 4090. But if you're the kind of person who has the money to do that, you are probably going to just do that anyway, and really didn't need my video on the subject. So I hope all of you have an excellent day.